Urban combat. The modern battlefield does not sit in the open plains, but in crowded streets. Over 75% of the world's population lives in cities, and these urban environments can conceal danger around any corner.
Struck an IED just outside of a checkpoint. Vehicle filled with smoke, no shrapnel damage or nothing inside the vehicle. Immediately upon hearing the explosion, seeing the smoke, notified everybody in the vehicle by saying IED. Got out the kill zone, stopped our vehicle, and we got out and started performing our checks and pulling security.
When under attack, the soldier's training kicks in. Assess the threat, get out of the kill zone, establish a zone of security. These are some of the lessons of urban warfare and what has become known as close quarters combat, or CQC. And the same three fundamentals apply to anyone thrust into life-threatening situations. At any moment, we could find ourselves facing a close quarters combat situation. Close quarters combat often means a soldier will deploy his sidearm. And for a quarter of a century, the standard sidearm of the U.S. Armed Forces has been the Beretta M9 pistol, with over 500,000 produced at the Beretta USA headquarters in Accokeek, Maryland. With over 20 years of law enforcement and military service, Beretta's Lynn Lucas knows that in close quarters combat, a soldier has to rely on his handgun.
In the military, what's the primary weapon system? It's the long gun. Close quarters, then these operators are going to transition to the handgun, which is the M9. When you look at the M9, the firearm is the most tested gun to date. You look at the theaters that we're working in, and the gun is performing. Folks here at Beretta take great pride in what we do, because we know that our product is going into harm's way.
The need for tactical skills in close quarter combat does not only lie with our military and police. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, 1 in 5 homes will experience a break-in or home invasion. Larry Vickers spent over 20 years in the U.S. Special Forces and teaches a tactical firearms class for civilians who are prepared to defend themselves.
1 shot, attempt to fire, transition, 5 shots pistol, then tap your buddy.
At the U.S. Training Center in Mayock, North Carolina, Larry is working with a sheriff and a CCW permit holder on the proper tactics when shooting on the move and rounding corners. With over 8,000 home invasions a day in North America, these skills are vital for any civilian who does not want to become another statistic.
In this scenario, I've got to work this piece of cover, clear my deep corner, move around this simulated sofa, through the open area, till the doorway where I'm going to pie off and clear as much of that room as possible. When I do that, moving through this sector in case I have to shoot on the move, I have to use my lower body to my advantage. That means bend my knees, take the shock of the step out as much as possible, and make sure I don't cross my feet. At this point, I'm going to engage this target, then continue to move around the sofa, making sure I don't cross my feet and I maintain situational awareness. When I come up to this doorway, I pull in my elbow and set myself up to where I can pie off this doorway.
Pieing off, or slicing the pie, is a method of looking around corners and obstacles while maximizing cover. This technique gives a distinct tactical advantage when used properly.
When I see the threat, I engage it and I continue to clear the room. I want to make sure I don't expose myself to the room unnecessarily until after I've cleared it. Now Brian's going to run it, and coming from a law enforcement perspective, he has to issue a command to give the individual a chance to surrender before he engages them. Nick is our classic homeowner, and he has intruders in his house. Normally he would be in a defensive mode, but he has to move forward in this case in order to secure his family members. Okay, to review this very basic scenario, we had a corner to clear, a piece of furniture to move around, an open room to get to, and make sure it's clear. This is all stuff you can easily set up on the range and replicates many real-world environments that you probably have at your own home. In my case, I laid the groundwork, Brian went through in a law enforcement fashion, and Nick was the homeowner clearing his own house. As you can see, the techniques were largely the same with the same result. Good job, guys.
The modern battlefield is not a field, but a building or structure that must be cleared by men on the ground in close quarters combat. There are almost 3.6 million home invasions each year in the United States, making these skills imperative for any homeowners who could be forced to clear their immediate area of a threat. In Mayock, North Carolina, lies the U.S. Training Center, the largest such facility in the world. Blackhawks David Jones and Steve Rose each served over 20 years in the U.S. Special Forces and demonstrate the proper techniques for a team clearing a house using a Beretta PX-4 Storm.
When you're doing a two-man room entry, if you will, that's one of the basic skills for CQB and any close quarter work.
As we're approaching the door, we're looking at, is it an outward or inward moving door? Is it sweeping to the left or is it sweeping to the right? Because that's going to dictate who's going in first. Clear. We try not to choreograph, so even if we know the building's floor plan, we're just going to go with the flow of the personnel. You just read off the guy in front of you. If he goes left, I'm going right. I pick up my field of fire, and then we can clear the solution.
While these tactics are reserved for police and military applications, the fundamentals of close quarters battles remain the same for any encounter.
Someone else in the room is like, not clear, door.
Not clear, door.
Moving.
Move.
We immediately will stack up on that thread or that door.
When I get to the door, I want to provide my inside foot about 4 inches outside of the room I'm going into, being this room. So when I approach the door, I'm going to come to the door and plant my foot about 4 inches. This gives me a shooting position either down the long wall, and then allows me to get my full body in the short wall and present myself down the room.
Hallways are problematic because it's a funnel. One person comes out with an automatic weapon, they can clear a hallway with 20 operators down it. There's no cover there. We're going to try to pan as much as we can so we're not exposing ourselves. We're going to call out that there's a hallway.
Hallway, hallway, hallway.
So once we pan and we clear the initial hallway that there's not an immediate threat, we'll start making our way down the hallway.
Hallways are not only a problem because they're the main funnel of potential fire, but also a lot of doors typically in hallways, so there are a lot of problems in there that need to get cleared off. So hallways are very dangerous and you got to get moving.
From here, all we're going to be focusing on are open doors, but it's basically going to be one room at a time. If this door is open, we're going right across, open door. He's either going to take long or I'm going to make entry. Clear.
Remember, if it's only two-man, we're making the decisions from a good point of security. We're not exposing ourselves and making bad decisions. So we're going to take the opportunity to look and make good decisions here. Don't rush to your death. In any combat scenario or any stress scenario, using your head, making good decisions is paramount. Also, training is very important. In all these scenarios, in my real experience, it's just like training. So you have to have a balance of both.
Our military units regularly engage in close quarters combat in urban environments and hone their skills for these types of encounters. The same tactics work for civilians at home as well. Studies show that Americans use firearms to defend themselves over 700,000 times a year. And since real life does not resemble Hollywood, neither should the training.
This Hogan's Alley you see behind me, in all honesty, is a lot of fun to shoot. It's like a big arcade game for adults. The problem is, walking down the center of this street and shooting targets on both sides has no application in the real world. My thoughts on a lot of what you hear from the Old West, remember how wives' tales go and stories. I look at a lot of that stuff from the Old West as nothing more than a fishing tale. Many of those shootouts and gunfights are essentially Hollywood fiction and have been blown way out of proportion over the years. It may look cool in movies. In the real world, if you're walking across the street and a bad guy popped up, you'd return fire and seek cover. Where a training apparatus like this Hogan's Alley does come into play is for law enforcement, military, or even civilians, where you set up specific training scenarios and they have to react off of threats that come at them. They can use vehicles or barricades or other types of cover to make this work for them, not against them.
The U.S. Navy SEAL teams are trained for reconnaissance and direct action missions. They take the fight to the enemy on his turf. Among the most highly trained units in the world, these experts constantly work to keep their skills sharp. Eric and Sean are former SEALs whose identity must remain hidden as their missions are still classified. At a private shooting range in Colorado, They are working on training drills with Dan Predovich, an award-winning master instructor.
Both Sean and I hadn't been on the gun in a while, shooting steel. With someone with the experience level of Dan, a lot of value to that. All of our training, a lot of it comes from some of the best civilian shooters in the world.
Shooting is a very, very perishable skill, and I can tell when I haven't been on the gun in a month or two. It's confidence. There's nothing like being confident with a firearm. I know if somebody comes and knocks down my door in the middle of the night, I mean, it's a good feeling to know that I can shoot, and I can shoot accurately.
Okay, what we're going to do is work on a little shoot and move drill. This is a figure-8 drill around these hay bales. We're going to be firing at the target. Generally, you don't want to cross your feet when you are moving because there's a chance that you'll trip.
The drills that Dan runs them through apply to any skilled shooter training for a close quarters combat scenario, including a civilian defending his or her house.
It's good to put yourself into mental scenarios. Once in a while, just think, what would happen if someone broke into my house at 3 in the morning? What's my first move? What's my second move? Stuff like that.
Yeah, the exercise here is to move up to these 2 windows on the side of this obstacle, and you can shoot 2 at each of the 3 targets from the left window. Go low, shoot 2 shots each at the same 3 targets, and then from the right side, shoot the same 3 targets, 2 each, just to get a little bit of movement. Shooting through ports, shooting through from a crouched position here. Fairly simple exercise. Got it? Okay.
Move up to barricade.
Hurry, hurry, go, 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 hurry, hurry!
When we haven't been on the gun for a little while, we'll start out slow, really working on that accuracy, and then building up speed, and then you start pushing the threshold a little bit till you break your accuracy, and you start missing or not as tight as groups, and then you pull it back, and you find that sweet spot.
Too slow, too slow, too slow.
Over 3/4 of the world live in highly populated areas, and since our police and military units train for the scenarios they expect to face in the field, that means they train for close quarters combat. Civilians can apply these same tactics to prepare for any situation. A trained shooter can work on these fundamentals at an outdoor range or shooting club, moving around barricades,
Pull in my elbow and set myself up to where I can pie off this doorway.
entering a room,
I'm going to come to the door and plant my foot about 4 inches.
footwork drills.
You don't want to cross your feet because there's a chance that you'll trip.
Be prepared for any situation, because lives depend on it.